On today's show, the Nets compete but crumble down the stretch in Toronto during another tight game. I'll tell you how Brooklyn has found a formula to compete in recent games and why they continue to come up short right now.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to Locked On Nets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Now, the number one sports podcast network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. I'm Erik Slater, Brooklyn Nets beat reporter for ClutchPoints.com. Thank you for making me your first listen of the day. The show is 100% free on all those great platforms. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. And on today's episode, I'm going to be recapping the Nets' 119-109 road loss to the Toronto Raptors on Sunday at Scotiabank Arena. And this was another game where the Nets looked like a competent basketball squad against a formidable opponent for the majority of the game. The Raptors had won 7 straight going into this one. They were playing as good as anybody in the NBA. And the Nets tied this game up with 4 minutes remaining. And it looked like another game like that Boston one on Friday where they had a legit shot to come out on top down the stretch. But Toronto closed on a 14-5 run, and the Nets come up short in this one. And while the Nets competed in this one, it is a similar formula to a lot of what we've seen in their recent games in terms of how they're able to compete, but how they're coming up short down the stretch. And you're looking at the formula, it has been in a lot of these games. Michael Porter Jr., as I've said and continue to say, is carrying an immense load offensively, and he continues to do it at a very high level. And also, Noah Clowney turned in a really good performance in this one, had 22 points. I'm going to do a whole segment on him. But those two guys, that new look revamped front court of Michael Porter Jr. and Noah Clowney, that's keeping the Nets in a lot of games. I mean, this is MPJ's eighth straight game of 20-plus points. That extends the longest streak of his career. And Noah Clowney also playing at a pretty high level. So the contributions that they're getting from those two guys offensively are keeping them in a lot of these games. And then they're getting contributions from some other supporting pieces alongside that duo. And that's how they've been able to stay in a lot of these games. And that was the case tonight. You had MPJ and Noah Clowney playing at a pretty high level offensively. And then you had Tyrese Martin, who came in and had 25 points off the bench and gave the Nets the scoring punch they needed with that second unit to stay in this one. And also, when the Nets fell behind at various points in this one, they're playing hard. I mean, this looks like just a different Nets squad compared to what we saw in the beginning of the season. The beginning of the season, the Nets were rolling over in a lot of these games. And the Nets' effort, honestly, was kind of a slap in the face to basketball fans and just the sport of basketball early in the year. And Jordi Fernandez clearly took serious issue with that because, this is a tanking season, obviously. Like, we all know that. But Jordi Fernandez is a competitive guy, and he wants to win, even though the Nets are going to lose a lot of these games, and that's just what they're going for organizationally. But regardless of whether the Nets win or lose, if the Nets do not compete and they aren't playing at a respectable level in a lot of these games, Jordi is going to take serious issue with that. And we saw that early in the season with things he said when the Nets started off 0-6. After that 6th game, he said, I'm failing this team, and I'm not getting them to compete on a nightly basis. He clearly took that very personally. After one of their road losses in Houston, he was like mumbling to himself coming off the court. So that was really something that was weighing on him. And I think he had a really telling quote before the Boston game on Friday. And he said that there's a difference between losing and being a loser. And losing is you lose. If you lose and you compete, that's one thing. But if you're a loser, that means you're not competing. You're not putting forth your best effort. You're not doing everything you can to give yourself a shot in some of these games. And that was Jordi's perspective. And you're seeing kind of that message really get through to the Nets in these recent games in the sense that they're not rolling over. They're not dying. Like, are there some games where they get blown out? Sure. But in most of these games over these last 5, 6, 7 games, they've been competitive and they're competing. Even when they fall behind, they're, finding it somewhere within them to come back. And a lot of that comes down to just hustle and want to. And then a lot of it also comes down to MPJ playing at a very high level and Noah Clowney playing at a very high level. But all of that is only going to get you so far. And we saw that again in this one. Like, this has been the formula. They stay in it. They stay in it. They stay in it. They get some big offensive performances. But down the stretch, do you have the closers? And the Nets on most nights are not going to have the closers on either side of the ball. Like, I'm talking about this recent 5, 6, 7 game sample size. And this has been the case that they've been able to stay in these games. But down the stretch, the majority of the time in these tight games, They do not have the closers. On the other end, the outlier performance was Friday, where MPJ was just able to put the team on his back and just carry them with 16 points on 7 of 8 shooting in the final 8 minutes of that game. They also got a big 3 from Yegor Dioman. But on most nights, when you have rookie ball handlers like Yegor Dioman, or you have, a journeyman like Tyrese Martin or Terrence Mann, whoever else handling the ball, and just the lack of pieces around them, that's not going to be a formula for success on the offensive or defensive end of the floor. And that's why I've said, like, a lot of Nets fans were getting concerned about, where they were going to be at in the tank race. They have 3 wins now. Obviously, a 3-12 record going into this one, now 3-13, is really bad. But like with the rest of the standings, the bottom of the NBA standings, and some of these teams like the Wizards, the Pacers, the Pelicans being so bad, some Nets fans were worried about, where the Nets were going to come out in this tank race, given how competitive they've been of late. And I understand that. But I will say that it's just clear that this Nets team has, a lack of closers. Like, they just don't have it on either end of the floor. If you're talking about guys who can get a bucket on their own, self-created, they don't have that too much. Like, MPJ can step up and do it in spurts like we saw him do in that Boston game. But for the most part, they don't have it. And then you talk about the defensive end of the floor. They don't have a defensive stopper. And you saw that in this one. They were not able to get stops down the stretch of this one. In the final 4 minutes, there was a stretch where the Raptors scored on 5 or 6 straight possessions. And that's because the Nets don't have that high-level, point of attack defender or defensive stopper. You look at the guys that they have guarding at the point of attack a lot of the time, it's rookies like Yegor Dioman or Drake Powell. And then you also have these, journeyman wings like Tyrese Martin, Zaire Williams, Terrence Mann, like guys that just are not even really decent to high-level, like, point of attack defenders. And because of that, the Nets surrender a lot of advantages. And because that lack of force at the point of attack, they have to go to a lot of gimmicky defensive strategies. And that's what you saw down the stretch of this one. It's them, doubling guys. It's them, playing at the level or playing really aggressive on these ball screens and getting into a lot of rotations and trying to just kind of like manufacture some havoc through some of these things that they have, because they aren't able to just stay in front of people and get stops their traditional way. So that is, that just underscores their lack of closers, as I'm saying, on both ends. That is really going to make it tough for the Nets to close a lot of these games. And the Nets are going to, do things to stay in games, as we've seen. Do I think, like, the biggest factor in them staying in these games, as I've said, has been the Michael Porter Jr. performance. And you think, like, sooner or later, MPJ is going to have to cool off. And when he does cool off, they're going to have some trouble, even staying in games, let alone closing out games. And even when they're in the games, like I've said, they're going to have struggles closing them out. So I just think that, the Nets are competing. They're playing a lot harder. You're getting formidable, you're getting high-level performances from a lot of these guys like MPJ, like Nick Claxton, like your younger guys like Noah Clowney or Yegor Dioman on some nights. So that's really a positive. And overall, like, I think they're still going to come up short, and they're still 3-13 through a lot of these games, and they still firmly are in a good position moving forward for the tank race. So all of that, I think, is a positive takeaway. And I think that this game was kind of a good formula for what you want to see in a lot of games in terms of MPJ continues to play well. He's looking like a guy who might be tradable or at least have some value, whether that's, at this deadline or the coming offseason. Then you have a guy like Noah Clowney showing some promise, Tyrese Martin, also a guy who's showing some promise. But in the end, the Nets compete, they play hard, but they come up short. And that's a formula that I think, if the Nets play like this in a lot of games, a lot of fans shouldn't take too much issue with that, because it is a positive. There are a lot of positives to take away from a game like this for this Nets squad. And one of those is Noah Clowney, who did play one of his best offensive games of the season and continues to trend in a positive direction offensively. So what am I seeing from Noah this year that is different from last season, and how should fans take into account what that means moving forward for him? I'll get into all that when I continue Locked On Nets after a quick break. Guys, let's be real. No one starts a business for the joy of calculating tax withholdings or managing payroll spreadsheets. That's where Gusto comes in, to take the stress out of payroll, benefits, and HR so you can focus on running your business and supporting your team. Gusto is the all-in-one remote-friendly payroll and HR platform that makes managing your team simple, transparent, and fast. Whether you're hiring, onboarding, or paying employees, Gusto helps you do it all from one place without the hassle or hidden fees. Guys, you get unlimited payroll runs for one monthly price, which means no surprise charges at the end of the month. Gusto's automated tools like offer letters, onboarding materials, and direct deposits save you hours each week. And knowing you can reach certified HR experts anytime gives you real peace of mind. So try Gusto today at gusto.com/LockedOnNBA and get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. That's right, 3 months of free payroll at gusto.com/LockedOnNBA. One more time, that's gusto.com/LockedOnNBA. The holiday season is right around the corner, and that means it's time to get your home ready. Whether you need more seating for guests, cozy new linens, or fun serveware for holiday hosting, Wayfair's Black Friday sale is here to help you make your space shine. And the best part, you don't have to wait. Wayfair's Black Friday deals are happening all month with up to 70% off everything from sofas to spatulas. Guys, I recently needed to upgrade my living room. I got a new area rug, and let me tell you, it completely transformed the room. I couldn't believe how fast everything shipped just in time for the holidays. Browsing through their site, it's easy to find pieces that actually fit your style. Nothing generic, just quality designs that feel personal. So don't miss out on early Black Friday deals. Head to wayfair.com to shop Wayfair's Black Friday sale for up to 70% off. That's WAYFAIR.com. Sale ends December 7th. Coming back from the break, continuing with today's Locked On Nets episode, talking about Brooklyn's 119-109 loss to the Toronto Raptors, and want to talk about Noah Clowney now, because I've talked at length about Michael Porter Jr., all the things that he's doing to keep the Nets in these games, and really the just ascension of him as this lead guy for the Nets and how he's handling that task. But Noah Clowney is the other piece in that front court alongside Nick Claxton. But Noah Clowney in this one really stood out, and he is one of the pieces in that front court that is doing a lot to keep the Nets in a lot of these games and keep their offense at least at a respectable level compared to a lot of, an offense that a lot of people thought was going to be one of the worst in the NBA this year with all of their, their lack of talent and experience in the backcourt. And you look at what Noah Clowney did in this one. He had 22 points, 1 rebound, 1 assist, 5 turnovers, 7 of 15 from the field, 1 of 7 from 3, 7 of 7 from the free throw line. So there were positives, negatives. There were some struggles, like you see there, 1 assist, 5 turnovers, 1 of 7 from 3. So there are going to be warts, but Noah continues to flash big things in an area that had been one of his main deficiencies, and that was self-creation, driving, putting the ball on the floor and scoring, and looking like a legitimate threat on some of these plays outside of just being a three-point shooter. Noah continued to do that in this one in a big way. We saw in this one, Noah had 4, drives and scores, 4 confident physical drives and scores in the first quarter of this one alone. And then more as the game went on, we saw him go down, pump fake, a closeout drive, and dunk all over Mamu Keshishvili, if I said that correctly, the big man from the Raptors, Seton Hall guy, shout out, Jersey guy right there with Seton Hall. But Noah just continues to make plays like that, and they're plays that we weren't seeing him make last season. Like I've talked about it, Noah last season was a three-point shooter, and he really couldn't do anything else. And he's still reliant on the three-point shot in terms of his shot chart. I'll get into the numbers of that in a second. But when you talk about his confidence as a driver, his ability to put the ball on the floor, get into the lane, create space, look confident and assertive in what he's doing and fluid on a lot of these plays, it's night and day compared to where Noah was at last season. It's a complete 180. And that, even though he's struggling in some other areas, like he's very limited as a playmaker, the three-point shooting isn't at a level of where you want to see it right now. But that was my biggest question about Noah, because the three-point shooting, like, is he going to be a high-level three-point shooter in the NBA? We don't know. He hasn't shot a good percentage yet, but he at least had shown some promise there and some nights where he could be a high-level three-point shooter. Prior to this, the ball handling, the self-creation, the driving, it really hadn't been there at all, aside from like a play, extremely sparingly here and there. And now we're to the point where he's showing this on a consistent basis. He's showing these flashes. I don't even know if you can call them flashes anymore because it's happening consistently. You're seeing these things on a consistent basis. And if he has the flashes from 3, if he has now this consistent or flashes or whatever you want to call it of the driving ability and some of the defensive stuff that you hope he'll be able to do, like he has all of these tools that he's showing potential with. And then if they can grow and get better from here, all of those things or multiple of those things, that gives you hope that he can be a legitimate rotation piece moving forward. You look at Noah for the season now, he's at 11 points, 3.5 rebounds, 1.5 assists, 1.6 turnovers, 38, 30, 77 shooting split. So the efficiency shooting the ball is not where you want it to be, but most of that is from his three-point struggles because Noah's shooting only around 30% from 3 this season. So you're going to want to see that get better, but the Nets seem to have confidence that he's going to be a three-point shooter. The thing that they've said needed to improve was the driving ability. If you look at the shot chart this year, it's not that much different. It's around the same. Like last season, he shot 70% of his shots from 3. And this season, it's almost exactly the same thing. 70% of his shots are 3s, 30% are 2s. So it's the same split. But last year, Noah was shooting 41% on 2s, which as a 6'9", forward big man is one of the worst marks that you're going to see in the league for a player of his size. So I said, 41% last season. Now he's near 58% on twos. So we're seeing a 17% jump in terms of what he's doing on these 2-point field goals. And a lot of that is he's shooting a little bit better at the rim, but also just his in-between game, that little mid-range game. He's been able to finish some of these tough running baby hook shots off the glass and some of these things from the short mid-range area. So all of that, he just looks much more confident, much more efficient as an offensive player when he's driving the ball. And we're going to want to see the three-point shooting come around. It is concerning that he's only shooting 30% from three this season, but he's had flashes. He's had extended stretches where he's been a good three-point shooter. I think through the first half of his games last year, he was around 40% from three. So we've seen that for extended stretches. We had not seen the driving ability for extended stretches, and we're starting to see that now. So both of those, there's still a lot to be proven in both of those areas, but if he can trend in the right direction in both of those areas and continue to work his way up, you're seeing a player that has some offensive tools that are going to play at the next level. And then you talk about the defensive end of the floor. He showed some flashes in this one. He had 4 stocks in this one, 2 blocks, 2 steals, but I'm still looking for more from Noah on the defensive end. And you're seeing him on a lot of plays, just the closeouts, a lot of his closeouts. He got beat on several plays on closeouts tonight, and the foot speed side to side, you see it on some plays, and then on some plays, it looks like it's really lacking. And I don't even know if it's foot speed so much as just him putting himself in disadvantageous positions in terms of being a little bit late on rotations, falling asleep a little bit, and then you're closing out and you're not in a position to, really do it effectively. So some of that is going to need to improve. Also, the physicality on low man rotations. You see it sometimes, the low man spot, the rotation over on the rolling big man when the Nets are playing at the level with Nick Claxton or Day'Ron Sharpe, and you get that big man coming downhill off the roll. Noah's that low man rotating over. And you see it sometimes. You saw that block on Keita in Boston on Friday. You see that physicality, that tenacity, that forcefulness going up towards to meet that guy on those low man rotations. And then other times it just looks like there's a lack of aggression in those spots. So that's something that you're going to want to see more consistently, is Noah staying engaged, not putting himself in disadvantageous positions off the ball or falling asleep. And then when he is coming on those rotations, a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more aggression, a little bit more assertiveness. And then the rebounding also, I think, has left a lot to be desired, because you look at Noah's numbers this year, he's at 4.2 defensive rebounds per 36 minutes. He's rebounding 12.5% of his opponent's missed field goals this year. That ranks 38th among 40 big men to play over 350 minutes this season per cleaning the glass. So the defensive rebounding metrics are really bad on Noah right now, and you see that. You're not seeing many plays where he comes away with a physical contested defensive rebound. And we've seen he added this weight and this frame, and that was a big talking point of mine and other people who cover the Nets coming into this season. And you're seeing that play in a big way on the offensive end with his shot creation, his driving ability, his ability to create space going downhill and finish. But on the defensive end, I think you're not seeing it play as much in terms of the physicality in the paint, whether as a rebounder, whether as a low man, or some of these other things. So you're going to need to see that get better. But overall, there are a lot of encouraging flashes from Noah Clowney, mostly offensively, but you're going to, there's potential there that I think that Nets fans can get excited about. And the other guy I want to touch on briefly is Tyrese Martin, who came off the bench in this one and had one of his best offensive games of the season. He's at 26 points in this one, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 4 turnovers, 7 of 14 from the field, 5 of 9 from 3, and 7 of 7 from the free throw line. So 26 points on 14 shots, 3 assists, 4 turnovers, so need to clean that up. But Tyrese Martin is a guy who, when he comes out and he competes and he plays well off the bench, the Nets are in a lot of these games when that's the case. You look at the games they've won this season, Tyrese Martin has played well in all those games. And a lot of the other games that they've been close in, Tyrese Martin is putting up good numbers off the bench. So he's kind of been a barometer of the Nets' ability to compete. And that's not that surprising, because he is the Nets only. He's not a point guard necessarily, but he's the Nets' other ball handler who's not a rookie. So if he plays well in some of these games, you're going to have a much better chance, because the Nets don't have many other guys in the backcourt, and he is taking up a lot of ball handling responsibilities. And if you talk about Tyrese, is he a guy that I'm that confident is going to be a long-term rotation piece for the Nets? No, but I think he's showing promise as a guy who could be a depth piece, who could be serviceable as a back end of the rotation guy. If you need some depth, if you need some guy to come in throughout stretches in the season where other guys are hurt, I think he's showing potential where he might be able to be that. And we're talking about a guy who the Nets got on a 2-way contract And he's really gotten to a point where he's secured a standard roster spot and he's secured a rotation role. And it's not like it's a role that he necessarily shouldn't have. Like, he's proving that he deserves to get minutes on a lot of nights for this Nets team. You look at for the season, though, he's shooting 41% from the field, so not good. But for him, with the expanded ball handling responsibilities, with the career high usage that he's posting, it's not terrible. And he's only shooting 33.3% from three, but he's attempting 4.5 per game, and he's attempting 8 per 36 minutes. So that's really high volume, like 8 per 36 minutes. That's 38th among 110 guards to play over 300 minutes this season. So he's ranking towards the top of the league in three-point volume, and it's only 33% he's shooting, so not great. But on that level of volume, I think he's showing some promise that he can be a good three-point shooter. And among the Nets roster bubble guys entering this season, he was the most proven three-point shooter of the group. So with that, the potential that you think he might have to be a decent shooter, also with the self-creation chops that he is showing in spurts, that lends me some encouragement that Tyrese could be like a serviceable end of rotation guy. And he's going to continue to get minutes at least throughout the first half of the season. And we'll see what he continues to show. But he's one of those guys who's going to be on the roster bubble. He's, him and Zaire Williams are two guys who I think the Nets are going to face serious decisions on after the season. And I think Tyrese, the beginning of the season has been positive with the Nets asking him to do some stuff in a role that he hasn't necessarily done before. So good stuff from Tyrese. When I close out Locked On Nets after this break, I want to talk a little bit about the rookie minutes and a little check-in on how Jordi Fernandez is handling some of those things and what Nets fans should be looking for moving forward from that. So all that and more, I'm going to continue Locked On Nets after a quick break. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of a game or just want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Coming back from the break, closing out today's Locked On Nets episode, recapping Brooklyn's 10-point loss to the Toronto Raptors on Sunday. And I want to talk a little bit about the rookies in this one and just to focus on their minutes, because we are seeing somewhat of a shift from Jordi Fernandez in how he's approaching the minutes, particularly in regard to Yegor Dioman. Like, Yegor played 28 minutes in this game after he played 29 minutes against Boston. And it was nice to see from Jordi because Yegor struggled for most of this game. Like, you look at what he did. He had 5 points, three rebounds, 4 assists, 2 turnovers, 2 of 10 from the field, and 1 of 10 from three. But despite those struggles, Jordi still let him play through some of those struggles, and he had him in there down the stretch. And that was not something that we'd seen from Jordi in a lot of other games that, that Yegor had struggled in prior to this, especially in a game where Tyrese Martin was playing the way that he did. And Tyrese also got minutes down the stretch, but Jordi had Yegor in there also alongside him for extended stretches. And that's, I think, a positive to see, because Yegor's second half minutes, I wrote an article about it this week. I talked about it in multiple podcasts. It was not where I thought it should be. I thought that the lack of, not trust, because, it's not necessarily trust that you're putting in, just the lack of commitment to letting him play extended minutes and letting him play through some of these struggles. You really hadn't seen that from Jordi, and you're starting to see that. Maybe that Boston performance was a little bit of a turning point with the way that Yegor played, with Yegor hitting that big shot when Boston had cut the lead to 2 with 5 minutes remaining, another clutch shot. Maybe Jordi now, we're going to see it where he lets Yegor play through some of these struggles. And do I need Yegor to play like 30 to 35 minutes per night? No. But Yegor was playing like 20 minutes over, the first 11, 12 games of the season. I think that number should be a little higher, in between 25 to 30. And we're seeing that over these last 2 games. And we saw that tonight, despite Yegor struggling. So that, I think, is a positive in regard to how Jordi Fernandez is approaching the minutes with him. But then you look at Drake Powell, and Drake played only 14 minutes in this one, just 5 minutes in the second half. And, Drake didn't really do anything special in this one. He had 6 points on 2 shot attempts, 4 from the free throw line. He had some defensive miscues and defensive lapses, but, it was tough for him to do anything special because he really wasn't out there. Like, he was barely on the court 14 minutes. And I think that's a little curious, especially in a game where Zaire Williams played 28 minutes in this game. And Zaire has been terrible lately. He's been like really, really bad for most of the season and especially of late. And Zaire didn't really do anything in this one. Like, he was a +1. He was actually the Nets' only player who had a positive plus-minus in this one. But like, you can't always look at BPM as a serious indicator of how things played out. And Zaire in this one, he continued to struggle, not really do anything. He was 1 of 3 from the field. And this was a big flip from what we saw last game from Jordi Fernandez, because you've had those rotation battles of the rookies for minutes in terms of Yegor Gioman and Tyrese Martin competing for the point guard minutes. And then you've had Drake Powell and Zaire Williams as these guys off the bench competing for minutes. And in the last game against Boston, we saw Drake play significantly more minutes than Zaire. And then Jordi flips it in this one, despite Drake showing some really good flashes in that Boston game, as he has in a lot of recent games, and Zaire struggling in a really big way. For some reason, it went from Drake playing significantly more minutes to Zaire playing double the amount of minutes that Drake played in this one. And I just do not see in a game like this why Zaire Williams is playing double the amount of minutes that Drake Powell is, especially given how they've both been playing lately. So is it the biggest deal in the world? No. It's only one game, but I think, we are still seeing, especially like in the Drake Powell case, and maybe this is like a return to play thing because Drake had the knee issue. He had obviously the multiple ankle sprains, and maybe they're just being conservative with the workload that they give him. But I think you want to continue to see Drake's minutes be consistent because he's showing a lot of good flashes, and he's showing more than I think a lot of Nets fans expected. And if Zaire Williams, I think the Nets, they're not going to bench Zaire Williams. I'm not saying the Nets should bench Zaire Williams, but I think that their minutes should at least be even, if not be in Drake's favor. So a game like this with Zaire Williams struggling in a huge way for like the last 4, 5, 6 games, for him to play double the amount that Drake played, I thought that was a really curious decision. I hope that that's something that Jordi corrects moving forward. But that's all I got for this episode of Locked On Nets. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys do not already, make sure to subscribe to the show on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, whether Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you enjoy the content, take a second, smash that like button, leave a comment, leave a 5-star review. Anything you can do to engage is much appreciated. But the Nets got the New York Knicks at Barclays Center on Monday. So I'll have coverage of all that and more when I'm back tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.